Lots of people coming in from the waiting room.
All right.
Hey
Yep,
guys.
we're here.
I feel like we need like some like walk-up music or something.
I know.
Right. Yeah.
Some Unskis.
What would be cool is if somebody grab me a wrench or something, would you?
Do some stand-up comedy. You're on, Scott. Yeah.
I'm on. All right.
They're still loading.
Welcome everybody. Thank you for joining.
Thanks, guys. Let's give it just a few more seconds here, and then we'll start to kick it off. We've got a really full house today. I'm super excited about that.
Great work.
I do my best work under pressure. Lots of promo, lots of great promo. Oh, Gary Keys says, hello from South Florida. Hey, Gary.
Hey, I know that dude.
You do?
It's a lot of familiar names here.
Oh, Phil Carpenter. Hey, Phil. Hello from Denver, Phil says. All right. So for those that don't know me, my name is Roxanne Dosh, and I'm the Director of Marketing here at Shop-Ware. I'm super excited to see all of the participation we have here. We have almost 200 people that are planning to join us today. So we're really, really excited about that. We have two amazing speakers that will be talking about a topic that's still relevant, especially as businesses are beginning to open up again. We'll be talking about showcase your shop's technical expertise and generate 5-star reviews. Carolyn Cocolette is Shop-Ware's founder and CEO, and she's also the owner of Luscious Garage, a hybrid specialty shop in San Francisco. Scott Brown is the founder of Diagnostic Network, a great networking platform for diagnostic technicians, and he's also the owner of Connie and Dick's, an automotive repair shop here in Southern California. So without further ado, I'll let you guys kick it off.
Awesome. Thank you, Roxanne. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for taking some time out of your busy day to join us. We're excited to put together a follow-up from a webinar that we did last week for WorldPAC about service writing and how to showcase your shop's expertise to increase your average ticket and generate a ton of 5-star reviews. I'm joined by Scott Brown. I'm going to let him introduce himself in just a second. If you have any questions, feel free to throw them in the Q&A panel, and Margot and Roxanne will hit us with some questions towards the end of the session. We're going to leave some time for those. The other thing I wanted to mention is that when we did the presentation, Scott was kind enough to introduce me last week. It was on WorldPAC's platform. We had to keep the sales pitch to a minimum and not basically tell you that the way you're going to do this is on Shop-Ware. But we're pretty excited to talk about this material today because this is stuff that basically can only be done by Shop-Ware, and it's Shop-Ware's killer app. So we're very excited to talk specifically to folks that may not be yet on Shop-Ware and those benefits, but also we're going to have lots of tips and tricks from both my shop and Scott's shop on how to use the platform to its maximum potential. So without further ado, a little bit about me. As some of you know, I came into this business through the service bay as a technician, and I started at a gas station back in 2001. You can see me there with my right-hand man, David Paulino. And at that store, there were no service advisors. Basically, the guy at the C-store would write something up, and then we would take it from there. We were responsible for owning the entire experience for the customer. And so I learned very early how to represent my own work. I was very proud of that. I took that with me when I ultimately opened my own shop in San Francisco 6 years later, specializing in hybrid cars. Obviously, hybrid car owners, especially at that time, were very tech savvy and were looking at, like what was the latest and greatest thing to do. And iPhone had just come out, and we wanted to have a system that would really resonate with that audience. But ultimately, we understood that this wasn't really about hybrids. This was just about the trends in consumer activity and demographics, and that's ever more relevant today. In 2013, I had ramped up my repair shop and had to decide what I wanted to do next. And I ultimately went with taking the tools that had worked so well for my own business and making them available to other repair shops, which is where we are today. I'm extremely passionate about how to present value to consumers. I have incredible fondness for the hard work that the aftermarket service professionals perform every single day, and being able to put that out there in front of your customers so you can be appreciated both personally and financially is my passion. It's my mission. I'm joined today by Scott Brown. Really honored to have him here. Scott's been in the industry for a very long time and made really fantastic contributions. I look forward to getting his input on this webinar. Also today, Scott, do you mind giving a little bit of your background?
Oh, I would be happy to. And first of all, I have to say that I am so honored to be here with you, co-hosting and presenting, because I've been in this industry for a long time, and I'm very, very passionate about what the industry is all about, and what we do to provide service for the motoring public. But going down through the bullet list here, I like that picture right there because it's pretty interesting, and I'll go into that in a second. So I do own and operate with my wife, Cindy Brown, Connie and Dick's Service Center here in Southern California. We're about 35 miles east of Los Angeles. Company is celebrating its 60th year this year, so we're really excited. We've got a nice facility, about 13,000 square foot building, and got a number of things that we do in the building itself. But moving along there, the digital future, that picture there at the top left shows me in my home office where I set up launched a bulletin board system back in the early 90s. And this is pre-internet days for those that are not familiar with BBS, but that was a beginning. I knew that connecting remotely and having access to information at your fingertips was going to be pretty prominent and playing a big role. And I'm still very passionate about sharing knowledge and information that way. I do some education there in the shop. We do some ADAS training for companies out there like AES Wave. We do some other technical training, and I do a lot of photography and video. Writing for P10 magazine, and I'm also deeply involved at other levels through associations such as ASCCA, AutoCare, NASDAF, AMI, and so on. So happy to again be here, and thanks, Carolyn, for the introduction.
Thank you, Scott. Scott has been a friend and also a mentor and finally a customer for several years, and he is one of the most outspoken advocates for our product, and we're very happy about that, because if anybody knows about software products, it's Scott, and uses it firsthand and also has created his own. So it's been a really remarkable partnership. Thank you again for being here.
You're welcome.
So showcasing your shop's expertise. The reason why this session is called Showcasing Your Shop's Technical Expertise is because technical expertise is everything. When you think about why people patronize your business, they come in because you're fixing their car at an affordable price and you treat them with respect. Those three things. A lot of people ask me the question, hey, you've got this environmentally friendly business, it's woman-owned, it's pretty, those must be great competitive advantages. And I like to remind them that if we don't fix the car at an affordable price and treat the customer with respect, none of that other stuff matters. Not only that, fixing the car is the number one thing. So your technical expertise is the most essential component of this formula. And that's because, if you can't fix the car, none of these other things matter. I mean, if you can, but the customer doesn't like the price, they can obviously go somewhere else, but they still have to find that other person to fix the car. And then obviously, if not the price, they don't like you, they still have to find someone to fix the car that they like more. So either way, you're at this, gotta fix the car component. And what's remarkable about that is that's what we're selling. What we oftentimes forget is that this is our product. It's also the thing that presumably we know the most about. It's what we're most expert on. And finally, it's what the customers need, right? The car is what they depend upon. And I think a lot of the management training and the emphasis on where we position ourselves as far as to our customers has been largely focused on these other two items, on pricing and on customer experience vis-a-vis like marketing and some of these other things. Actually, this fixing the car component is paramount. It's prerequisite to all these other things. And frankly, it's the thing we talk the least about. So the focus of this webinar is going to be how to showcase to the customer how you fixed their car. That's what we're going to show you today. The good news is that there's a lot of room for improvement on that, and that's good because we need to improve. There's a lot of stuff happening in the industry right now that's making our jobs more and more difficult, and so finding ways that we can really boost our businesses is essential right now. We see obviously the trends in the cars themselves, right? Everyone who's an industry professional understands how complicated contemporary cars are, and they're not going to get any less complicated anytime soon. And then on the right-hand side, we have the other piece of this equation, which is the customer. And while, you know, presumably they are used to using phones and having lots of screen time, they really have no way of appreciating how complicated and how the car works. And that's by design, right? It says check engine, but it doesn't mean check engine and it doesn't mean them. So they're inherently disconnected from this high-tech car. And so when something goes wrong and they need their car fixed, we're the ones left to have to kind of reconcile between these two parties, right? We have to satisfy them both. And the trick is that we're really not doing a very good job communicating those aspects of the car over to the customer. Here's an example of a, you know, not uncommon experience with the customer standing at the counter, having kind of an impersonal, mysterious exchange with a person, and then obviously some auto repair is going on the other side of that wall. They can't see it. This is not a very friendly, warm, encouraging experience for the customer. And that's just when the customer is in the facility, right? There's other aspects of how we communicate with the customer that's not terribly encouraging either. Our industry is at an adapt or die moment. Scott and I are actually continuing our tour tomorrow on Carm Capriato's Town Hall Academy, and the focus of that event is going to be adapt or die. So if you want to talk more about that, you can join us at Carm's podcast tomorrow. But when we think about all the different pressures on our business, there's obviously, you know, dealing with the technicians, dealing with the tooling, dealing with the training. So internal to the shop, there's a lot of work that we have to continue to do. I mean, just finding the technicians is hard enough. But then outside of the business, there's all this competition for the customer's trust, not only other shops, which is traditional, but we're seeing more and more pressure from, you know, the internet and potentially concierge services. And what has to happen is that we, as both service providers, the technicians themselves, and the business owners, have to become much better communicators and record takers to really, again, showcase what you are providing as a product and getting that customer's buy-in for these additional prices and these additional services. So this is a moment where we really need to reach our customers in a different way, unlock additional efficiencies, and obviously get paid for what we do. Historically, what we've done is paper repair orders, either generated from your shop management system or handwritten tickets, or we've been calling folks over the phone, probably both. More recently, we've been able to use other kinds of tools like digital vehicle inspections and texting. Those have been godsends because you know, DVI has finally allowed you to get some digital content like photos in front of your customer, and then texting's actually been able to get their response when otherwise you're just leaving voicemails all day long. But even those more recent tools are not ideal in several ways. DVIs typically are only focused on what happens when the car first comes in. It's the initial inspection, which is to say that the DVI does a really good job showcasing to the customer what you'd like to do to the car, but it doesn't actually capture what you actually did to the car. So being able to get all of that up in front of the customer is really important, and also emphasizing that at the beginning, during, and after the repair. Same thing with texting. Texting is usually a simplified exchange, like, hey, it's going to be X amount of money. Is that okay? That's not a very high dollar presentation to the customer. So we'll be showing you some updated communication methods using Shop-Ware that really help you bring this conversation to the next level.
Hey, Carolyn, let me just interject something there.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's no surprise to us that you know, these vehicles are complex, but I remember one of my colleagues pointed out somebody well known in the industry made a statement about automobiles are everywhere, and they are one of the most complicated devices a human will interact with in their life.
Mm-hmm.
And it just blows me away that the consumer really has no concept of how complicated it is, and really what's needed to be done to be competent in what we're delivering. So this is feeding right into what we need to do to be able to educate our clients.
And we're so close, right? We're inside of the business. We take that for granted. And sometimes I think people are kind of embarrassed. They don't want to be too proud to the customer about what amazing work we're doing every single day. And then we're surprised when they don't appreciate what we're doing. Part of the struggle of not putting the car in front of the customer is that we're misconstrued as the problem, right? Like we're the obstacle in the way of the customer getting what they want, which is their car back on the road. And what we need to do is actually get ourselves out of the way, put the car in front of the customer and say, hi car, hi customer, let me introduce you to each other. If you can get to know each other a little better, we're happy to help sort of, you know, make this relationship as positive as possible. Because ultimately the car is the customer's problem, you know, not the shop's problem. So here are the key components to the shift in what you're going to do as far as communicating to customers. I think for folks that are already using Shop-Ware, you're probably very familiar with this. Again, we'll be demonstrating how to use the application with these three things in mind, with some additional details. For folks that are not, this can be pretty profound, and you might be like thinking to yourself, what the heck are you suggesting here? So I'm going to take a few minutes to just unlock or uncover some of these things so you understand what we're talking about, and then we'll jump into some demos. So the three things that you need to do, and this is it. These are the three things. It's not like it's a wholesale redux of your business. It's just focusing on these three components in terms of how you're presenting your information to the customer. The first is that you're going to rethink CCC, or concern, cause, and correction. I'll talk about that. Essentially, we want to take customer states out of your services and allow essentially the customer conversation to take place separately, so that you're not writing like you did, you know, back in the last century. You're also going to be clarifying your labor operations. So really showcasing what those individual services include, so that the customer can see why they cost money. And then last but not least, digital content. So again, folks who are using DVI, they're like, yep, I'm already doing this. But again, the emphasis is being able to do it before, during, and after the repair. So throughout the customer's experience. So first step, rethinking CCC. You're going to stop putting customer states as part of the service that you're charging for. You're going to stop using codes or jargon in your services, and you're going to stop including back of house notes on the RO. And let me show you what that looks like. So here's like a traditional concern, cause, correction type of write-up. So the name of this service is MWL. Again, that's kind of a combination of the customer states and the jargon, which is that we know what MWL is, but the customer doesn't necessarily know. And then inside of the service, it says, customer states MWL on, pulled codes found P0171, tested oxygen sensor found bad, replaced oxygen sensor, cleared codes. And then a part is listed, and then we see a total for the repair, which is $855 over here on the right. The problem with this is that Essentially, what you are presenting to the customer here is their complaint, and what they're being asked to pay for is related to their complaint versus what they're being asked to pay for, which is the services that you are providing. Here's an example of back of house notes getting into the repair order, and also kind of some translated customer states. So we see here under service requests, drop off with a couple exclamation points, check and advise, customer states, failing wheel bearing, advise, customer auth, et cetera, drop off, exclamation point, exclamation point. Again, very traditional way of putting a step in front of the customer. This is very distracting. Obviously, drop off is here for the shop's internal operations to keep track of whether the customer is going to be waiting or taking a loaner or what have you. And that's not the customer's problem, right? And also the customer's not paying for drop off. So you only want to put in front of the customer what you're going to be charging them for, what they're paying for, what's the value. What you're going to start doing is putting customer states notes in one separate place in plain English. And what's remarkable about that is that, first of all, it's factual. So it's just actually what the customer stated. That means that you don't have to take a lot of time to try and figure out where to put customer states in different kinds of buckets. So like, for example, how many concerns do they have, and therefore how many little buckets do I have to make? Then you don't have to take whatever the technician found and figure out where to put it in one of those buckets. It also eliminates the problems with redundancy, where essentially the customer has a warning light on and a drivability concern and a noise, and it turns out those are all caused by the same thing. So you have to have repeated things on the RO, and the customer's not paying for it multiple times, so that's confusing. All of this puts the conversation to the customer in a much more intuitive way. It makes sense to them. This is what they actually said. So not only does this take less time, it also is clearer to your customer. On Shop-Ware, there are several different places that you can put customer states notes for folks that are not using Shop-Ware necessarily, and you're trying to adapt some of these things to your workflows. It really doesn't matter where you put the customer states notes as long as you don't put them inside of your services. And I'll show you what that looks like. The other thing you're going to do is present your services individually. So every maintenance service, every diagnosis, every repair is a separate service. And that's important because maintenance, diagnosis, and repair are three totally different types of services. And so being able to showcase what those are and what those are included, again, is adding value to the customer. It also helps you itemize what those things are going to include. So you're going to put your labor actions for each one of these services written out, not in one gigantic block of text, but the individual lines. And when you think about, okay, well, what should I be sharing with the customer? Obviously, you're not going to write like, okay, technician took one step forward, technician took another step forward. You're not going to go too detailed. But you can think about it in terms of, first of all, what are the things that you're charging time for? So presumably that's what the customer is paying you to do. If it's taking technician's time, then that's what you're charging to the customer. What is the technician spending time doing, or things that you might assign to different technicians? So if you're thinking, okay, one tech did the alignment and another tech did the 0-point calibration, those are good examples of two lines that you'd want to keep separate. And then also that would allow you to assign those to different technicians for the sake of recording their build hours. So this is how you're going to change your service writing independent of what's traditional for CCC. Here's how this ends up looking. So instead of the MWL, you'll have a service that's called warning light on. And if you're a proponent of using testing instead of diagnosis, you can put first hour of testing. And then inside of that service, you have all the things that you're going to perform as part of that warning light diagnosis. And then as a second service, this is the repair, we have remove and replace oxygen sensor, and then what that service included. This is $486 of labor. So depending on your labor rate, this is like a 3-hour-ish service. And presumably you spent 3 hours, not just R&Ring the oxygen sensor, right? There was other stuff that was why that was more expensive. Pull the intake, lower the subframe, whatever it is, put that on the service so they understand, okay, this is why this was more expensive. So when you look at these two things side by side, you can start to appreciate what the customer's mindset is reading this stuff, which is what this is all about. What does the customer think when they are reading what you're presenting to them? Over here on the left, it's $855 for a 3-letter acronym that I don't really understand, with presumably a repair. And again, the $855 is being justified based on a warning light on. So I got charged $855 for having a warning light on, versus I got charged $855 because I got my oxygen sensor replaced, right? They're not getting charged because the light's on. They're getting charged because you did something to the car. Over here on the right-hand side, you see the difference, right? And not only do you see the extracted diagnosis from the repair, this is helping advisors remember, oh yeah, I'm supposed to be charging for diagnosis, and then justifying that charge to the customer with detail of what that diagnosis includes. And then it's clear to see, you know, what the customer is being charged for and what you actually did to the car. We're going to go into some more real world examples here between Scott's and my shop. Scott, did you want to add anything else to this while I'm here?
Got to unmute. Yeah, I mean, this is great. I see the one on the left there, and we get a lot of cars that come in that come from other shops, and the car is still not fixed. And we always ask, hey, well, what's been done before? And we review these tickets, and it's like, it's all over the board. It's hard to tell what in the heck actually happened. Mm-hmm. So this is spot on. Looking at that one on the left, if I was the consumer, I'd go, well, I probably could have went to the internet and punched in that code and put that sensor in myself and saved all this money, because that job is pretty simple, right?
Mm-hmm.
So no, this is great. This is awesome.
Okay, let's get into a few more examples. So I'm going to start by sort of throwing a ticket together so you can see kind of when we're talking about putting customer states on the ticket, what does that look like? And when I did this presentation last week, Scott and I were kind of decompressing after, and he said, you were talking about pulling your customer states notes out of the service. And I'm thinking to myself, is she saying like, don't put customer states notes on the ticket? And it's like, no, of course you need to put the customer states note on the ticket. It's just don't put it on the service. So here's an example of just a blank estimate on ShopWare. So let's say that this customer is coming in and they have what is probably the more traditional type of visit these days, which is I have a maintenance, like a oil change or a 5K or whatever they're due for. And I have a couple things that I want you to do. And then based on what outcome of both looking at the car for the maintenance and looking at the car for the concerns, there's going to be some recommendations and therefore some additional repairs. So there's maintenance, and then there's going to be diagnosis, and then there's going to be repairs, and they're all going to be separate. So if I was going to start this ticket, let's say that they've got a maintenance service, I can pick, a 5K, which would be like the typical service at my shop, which we call the vitals. So I'm going to throw that one down. So here's an example of the way that looks. We've got itemized labor items. We've got the parts that are going to be included in this. We've got some additional fees. And then we have an inspection that is part of that maintenance service. Then this customer, let's say, also has a warning light on. So I would say, what's my warning light on can job? And I would throw that on there. Talk about can jobs in just a second. And now I have a second service, and that service is for warning light on. I can put over here, two concerns. Her maintenance light is on and she's 5K, and the check engine light is on. Please check and advise. So in this case, I have put this on the Shop-Ware notes feed. It's just the first note, and then any additional conversation that we're having about the repair will just follow on in the same notes feed from there. Some folks want to have, go ahead, Margot.
Sorry, Carolyn, there are some specific questions about what you're showing now. Do you want them now or later?
Let's circle back because it might get answered by some of these other aspects in a bit, or a
Very
little bit more with the demo. Some folks like to put customer states directly onto where the customer is reading with the service. Shopware does offer you a so-called comments box. So if you want to put that detail like as part of the individual service description, you can put that here. So folks that prefer that, there is a place to do that. But generally speaking, what you're seeing is what we're being charged for over here is the thing that's being done on the car, independent of what the customer has asked for or what the customer is stating. I wanted to mention that these services are now part of a preloaded CAN job library that you can get when you sign up for Shopware. So here are some examples of like a maintenance service and a warning light diagnosis, but we have other examples of how to do this, not just with these two. We have diagnostics, we have additional oil changes and so forth. We have generic inspections as well. So we have one called the flashlight inspection, which is actually a reference to Bogie Latainer and her approach for DVIs, which is we're going to do an inspection. We're not going to charge for it, but we can only look at stuff that's available with our hands and a flashlight, which is where it gets its name. So we see a couple of comments about that under the labor lines, and then there is a abbreviated inspection that's very high level that allows the technician to very quickly document what it is that they've looked at as part of that courtesy inspection. So minimizing how much free labor you're performing. Here's what that looks like on the actual ticket.
Carolyn, just to reiterate, I know that you've been working on this for a long time, and I know I helped you with this, but now say I'm a current Shopware customer. How do I get access to these new CAN jobs that are put together?
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Yep. So if you're interested in getting these and you're already on Shopware, you're not signing up and getting these already loaded for you, we can load them for you. So just contact support and we will load this library for you. It's about 30 CAN jobs, and happy to answer additional questions on these offline. If you want a demo, our sales team is certainly capable of showing you a demonstration of all these different service structures. Here's an example of work actually live within my own repair shop. And actually, I'm gonna go to this ticket here. This is sort of the classic case of how this comes together in Luscious Land. So in this case, the customer's name is Sally. Over here on the right, you see quite a bit of customer states. So this is basically a cut and paste from an email that came in. So again, we don't even necessarily need to interpret what that email said. We can just take the entire body of the email and just paste it into the notes feed. So we are literally reading what the customer stated. We're going to get into digital content and how to show diagnostic detail in a minute. I actually realized, I think I'll pause on this right now, Scott, and we can come back to this as an example with, once we get into some of the examples of digital content. So I want to show you these health checks and then some of the other media that we're attaching here. But for now, over here on the left-hand side, what you can see is, again, this warning light diagnostic, which, you know, by the way, we get $150 for all day long. Luscious also has a standard courtesy check, very short and simple, tire pressure, oil, and checking the inverter operation, which is something that is a important QC thing for hybrid cars. And then we see our hybrid battery pack repair. So in no way would we ever put red triangle on as the name of this service. We want this service to be called Replace Hybrid Battery Pack, and then show all the individual things that we are doing as part of that service to justify that that service is $2,800. And then this is, again, that example of that 5,000-mile maintenance with an inspection as part of it. Scott, do you want to share your, go ahead.
Well, yeah, so these canned jobs here, I mean, really, there's a lot of intelligence that's gone into how these are structured, and our shop is continuously evolving, right? You know, we sometimes discover that, hey, there's another process we should be doing when this particular job comes in. And we can now add that, one as an inspection item, but also as a labor item. This is huge, because, you know, we get a lot of cars that come in and customer says, you know, how much to check out my check engine light or whatever. And, you know, we give them a price and they go, well, just for checking it, right? Now, if you lay this out, you lay the job out there and you say, hey, these are the 5 steps that are going to need to be done to get us to where we need to be, to give you an intelligent choice. Now the customer has a little more perspective on what that value item is versus, you know, going down to the parts store and having the codes read and then they give them a laundry list, right? So, I mean, we run into these challenges every day, and I'm sure other shops do too. And it's very frustrating that consumer continues to value us as just a commodity and not a professional service provider.
I want to get through, thank you, Scott. I want to get through a couple of these other items, and then I want to break this back out, and I want you to take us through some of your ROs, because I know you've got one in particular that's really a great example. So in review, what you're going to do for CCC is put customer states somewhere else, get rid of the codes and jargon, and don't put back of house notes on the RO. What you're going to do is present customer states separately. You're going to present your services individually, each maintenance, each diagnosis, each repair, and inside of those services, you're going to list what those services include. A couple comments on checklists. So obviously there's been a lot of emphasis on DVI. I like to point out that there's really 3 different kinds of checklists that you can perform. There's maintenance courtesy inspections, there are diagnostic inspections, and there are quality control inspections. They're all important. Again, Shop-Ware allows you to put inspections native to services. Again, that's unique to Shop-Ware. And what that allows you to do is have checklists for all 3 of these contexts. Traditional DVIs only satisfy the top. So again, these library can jobs, sales team's happy to show you different examples of those. And we'll show some of them also in our example ROs. Here's one that I already talked about a little bit. This is another one that Scott reminded me to include here. So this is a valve cover replacement for early generation Prius. And you'll notice here at the bottom that there's a single checklist item as part of the service, which is confirm that the wipers are working. And the reason is because we had an issue with someone forgetting to plug the wiper motor back in, and the car left, and a week later we got the phone call that, hey, it's raining and now my wipers don't work. And of course we realized that we had overlooked that as part of the service. In Shop-Ware, you can just drop that into that service, then you know for sure that that technician is going to have to check that off before they can complete that job. This is an example of checklist as a part of QC. Very easy to do.
Yeah, and that's a very powerful. I mean, talking about how to manage your shop or your processes in your shop to make sure that these technicians are following the steps, or not only the technician, but maybe the QA person is validating what's going on. It's no different than, say, a checklist that a pilot would use as he pre-flights an aircraft. You want to make sure you cover cover all the bases, right? I know there was another comment, you know, it's nothing worse than seeing that vehicle come in for service and then drive out the driveway and you see them hit the brakes and one of the brake lights isn't working. It's like, come on, really? So this is great.
Thanks, Scott. And then we've got, some of these are yours. I'm going to let you talk about these.
Sure. So this is, you know, the drivability stuff or the engine warning light stuff is really, really tough sometimes to sell. Again, customers don't realize what we're doing. And really, since this screenshot's been done, we've actually augmented this a little bit further. But on the inspection item, every car that comes in, we do a NHTSA recall check. We run that VIN number and check. And in some states, like we're in California now, when you go get your smog check, it's now doing a NHTSA recall check. You can't get your car registered unless you have your open recalls taken care of. So you need to make sure that you're doing that. And we can add these inspection items in here. Here's where we find that you know, we've got a query, we've got a problem, we've got the fault. It's pretty much plain English there. And then on the fault analysis, you know, we can put the research information that we did, and that we did confirm that there is a TSB, but it's not applicable to the particular vehicle. If you run into a situation where you are checking TSBs and then you don't find any and you don't document that you did that, that's really a disservice, I feel. I mean, you're adding value by documenting what you did do. And I do like, you know, back earlier we were talking about selling testing. Really, these are the processes that we're taking to arrive at a conclusion, or to validate certain things. It's no different than saying going to the doctor where they take your temperature, they measure your blood pressure, what have you. You should be doing these things and documenting them, because it helps to cover your butt, especially when you're in a state like this where you've got the Department of Consumer Affairs and Bureau of Automotive Repair that can come in and take a look at an invoice and you know, either shoot you or go, oh my gosh, wow, you guys know what you're doing. You covered all your bases. You know, the cards are all on the table. So, you know, I like to tell my guys to make sure that you document the paperwork, so that if the only two people there are the judge and the customer, that the paperwork is there representing us accordingly. So. Yeah, and here's another one. So, you know, we're starting to do some ADAS stuff. This is another subject, but I'm doing training on ADAS, and part of the process is that you need to make sure that you're intaking the vehicle properly, and then it goes out the door with all the proper steps. So we've taken some jobs and just configured the ADAS functionality to make sure that everything there that the customer is going to see is there and documented properly. And this is what we do. We find out why the car is there. Why is it being requested that we do an alignment? Road test the vehicle, understand its behaviors, and so on. And then as we document things, we want to make sure that we're adding all the information. Photo and screenshot everything that you're doing. You know, a lot of these scan tools have a screenshot function. It's great to put that stuff in there, because now you're able to create a good trail. After you do your road test, you know, what you do your post scan, you're showing competence here that you are following every one of the recommended best practices, and doing everything in your power to make sure that that vehicle is back safe on the road. One of the biggest items I've seen out there, guys are really afraid of, you know, what is the liability? Well, you know, things can happen at any time, but if you're the service professional and you're following all the steps and you're documenting and you're saying, hey, I'm returning this to service, found that all the systems are operating as defined in the operator's manual at this time, that's golden, because, you know, the guy could run over something out on the road and it not be related to what you did, but you're proving, or you're showing that you're actually doing what you should be doing to put that vehicle back into service.
So we talked a little bit about CCC. We talked about clarifying labor operations. Thanks, Scott, for taking us through some of those greatest hits. I mean, Scott's shop is probably the best diagnostic shop on the surface of the planet. So he sets a pretty high bar for examples of high test can jobs. But, you know, whatever your expertise is in your own business, you obviously got into this business because you had a point of view about how you thought cars should be serviced, and just put that point of view into the services themselves so the customers can see it and appreciate it. The last one of these is emphasizing digital content before, during, and after the repair. Again, this is one that I think is just low hanging fruit, and ShopWare makes it incredibly easy for you to get this stuff up in front of the customer. I'm going to let Scott talk through sort of the high level concepts, and then we'll jam into some examples.
Yeah, so the high level concepts here are that you basically, I mean, pictures are worth 1,000 words, right? And what's a video worth? When you want to basically compare a good and a bad, and I'll give you an example. Say you've got a strut that's leaking on one side and not on the other side. Take a picture of both. Customer can see that, and that saves you a lot of time in trying to explain things. And I think Carolyn may have a screen showing where we actually failed in that order at one time, and we of course made some changes as a result. But you know, showing them what the overall picture is, and when you take a picture of something, you may want to think about how the consumer is going to interpret this picture. So if you're taking a picture of something up close in the vehicle, that customer may not understand where it's at in the vehicle. So you may want to take a second picture where you back up and you give them some point of reference. You know, it's at the right front or the right rear of the car. Mm-hmm. It's awesome to take pictures of your test results and then follow it up with your final results to make sure that you're showing some contrast. During the repair, that's golden. I saw some pictures that Carolyn had where they've had to replace a wiring harness on a car, and they laid the whole wiring harness out on the floor and they took a picture of it. Or say you're doing an evaporator or what have you. When that car's all apart, take a picture of it. That customer will probably freak out, but they'll understand that there's a ton of labor or service operations that went into, you know, taking this thing apart and putting it back together properly.
I mean, you did the work, right? You've already taken the car apart. It takes 15 seconds to pull the phone out of your pocket and snap a photo of it. Yeah. Like you've already made all the effort. Taking the photo is not the hard part. So get that captured and get that in front of that customer. I've got some examples here. Go ahead.
Yeah, Scott. The other thing we do, you know, with these pictures, a lot of times we'll, as that car is going through the shop, we'll take and repurpose some of these pictures for our social media. And so this, you know, we'll make a note, hey, Mr. Watson's Buick had this thing going on with rats or whatever. And then, you know, maybe the next week we'll go back to that invoice and grab a couple of those pictures, repurpose them for our social. And now we've got some real content there to share and help us remarket our company. Yeah, here's some stuff that we had in our shop. There's a broken belt-driven vacuum pump. There's a turbo, the upper right-hand one, that's a turbo oil feed screen. So you can think about what was going on with that turbo while the vehicle's in operation. Sometimes you've got very intermittent problems. That picture at the lower right, actually the middle right, is that's a nut, that's a ground nut, and this car had been back a few times because we could never duplicate the complaint, but we were able to finally show the customer, hey, this is why we had to spend some money and some time on solving that particular problem. But customers don't get to see this kind of stuff, you know, and we're documenting post. That picture on the left is actually a post repair showing that the crankcase pressure is back in order. You know, we're running into some, you know, anomalies where we've got fuel conditions out there that are creating problems. So we want to be able to say, hey, we took some time, we pulled some fuel out of your car, we validated that the alcohol content was correct or it wasn't correct. And, you know, we do a lot of other testing here. Injector flow balance, that one on the right there, that car had some interesting problems, and, you know, a new set of injectors fixed it, but we were able to show the customer how much deviation there was between those cylinders, and that was enough to cause a problem. Again, adding more value to the service ticket.
Each one of these tools that you're showing costs you money. Obviously, the tests take time, but if you're pulling a tool out, even if it's just a special tool, take a picture of it and show it to the customer, because that's part of what, you know, you offer as your suite of services at your shop, and then the customer gets to see and appreciate, like you know, wow, look, you did an injector flow test. I had no idea what that looked like. Like, that looks really sophisticated.
Yep. And you know, we're always trying to differentiate ourselves, right? We are not the same shop down the road or what have you. And we want to basically reflect that at every opportunity. So when that customer gets a ticket, you know, you never know. These customers are usually talking to other people. And, you know, if they have a bad experience, of course, they're going to talk to probably more people just to bitch and complain about it. But if they have a really good experience and they're having an experience that's totally blowing them away, it's likely they're going to want to come back. And if they end up at a shop that doesn't do this kind of comprehensive reporting, they're going to expect it. And if they don't get it, hopefully they'll be back to us and understand why they need to stay with us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, more photo. I mean, there are so many small little problems that pop up on cars that can cause strange anomalies, and we want to get to the bottom of the issue. And most of these are yours, I think, Carolyn, right? Yeah.
Yeah, this is from my list. One of the things I like to point out here is that even if the maintenance service includes an air filter, which means you've already sold the air filter and you're just doing it, still take a photo. Take the original and the new one next to each other. Take the old spark plugs and put them next to the new spark plugs. Take a picture of it. You've already done the work. They're already sitting there on the counter. Take a photo of it, show it to the customer to show that value again. This is presumably when they're coming to pick up the car, so that when they pay for that maintenance service, they go, okay, yes, I appreciate that something changed. Here's your strut example, Scott.
Yeah, here's my strut example. The quick story is that this car came in first time visit. We did an inspection. The left rear strut was clearly leaking. That's the only one we took a picture of. We sent the car out and the customer declined buying new struts. And it was probably 3 or 4 weeks later, we got a letter from them saying that they took it to another shop and the shop said that we were trying to rip them off and there's nothing wrong with that car. And I thought, oh my gosh, okay. So we now have a new policy where, you take a picture of all the other ones on the car so the customer knows. But in addition to that, I remember seeing some service information where the OEM clearly defined the stages of failure and when they need to be done. So, my guys have access to all the service information. You quickly do a screenshot, you give them that data, that speaks volumes. It's not you telling them what needs to be done. You're letting the OEM with, the factual data, and we got the train coming by here, demonstrate what's good and what's bad.
Hey, Carolyn, just wanted to let you know we have about 7 minutes left in our allotted time.
Terrific. Thanks, Margo. I'm also watching the clock. I think we already talked about some of these things in our course of conversation here. Here are some more examples to sort of feed those that are looking for some inspiration. This is another great story at a Scott's shop. And in this case, you're actually seeing after the repair, the fuel pump flow, and that, not only is the pressure is the same in both cases, but you can actually see the difference in the fuel flow, which was the issue with this vehicle. Here are examples of screenshots. If you don't know how to take screenshots, follow up with us. We'll give you some instructions on how to do that with whatever hardware you're using. For folks that are familiar, this is a great way to get free content onto that RO, just like Scott was saying with that TSB. Take a screenshot, put it on the ticket. Here are some examples of recordings that we make at Luscious Garage and present in front of the customer. Again, I can go into some more detail on some of these things. These are extremely high value, and essentially we're taking these recordings while we're bleeding the vehicle. So it's not taking any additional time except to pull out the scan tool, plug it in, and record these 4 PIDs. It might add 5 extra minutes to the service. We enforce that the technicians do this every single time, and we put this graph on the ticket every single time, not only to then show to the customer that everything was working and our technical expertise, but also in case something happens. We've now proven that this entire system is operational before releasing the vehicle. This is another example of a hybrid battery pack, which I'm going to show as a specific example that I had earlier, before and after. These are some examples of how to communicate with the customer. I saw some requests to see what sort of the customer side of things look like. And obviously we're happy to do a demonstration for you. I have a feeling that we'll probably optimize this webinar a little bit more and do this again. And maybe we'll get into some more in-use examples, Scott, since this is run a little bit long. And then we can go into some more specific demos of sort of the workflow step by step. This is an example of a customer at the counter approving a work order. And you can see that just having this in the touchscreen on a swivel at the desk is a really great way to have a digital experience for the customer. So it's not just what are you saying, but how are you saying it? And then this is an example from Scott's shop. Do you mind talking us through this a little bit?
Sure. You know, with all the COVID stuff, we're in LA County, and this is before LA County had any of their recommendations or guidelines, but we decided to close our office off and move our check-in area outdoors, and Shop-Ware made it real easy for us to do it. We just threw up we had an Apple TV in the back room, and basically just plugged that into the HDMI on that TV, and we wirelessly can push up from any of the tablets or phones or computers to display the ticket to the consumer. So they can just stand there, we can clearly explain to them what's going on. We proxy sign for them, we start the repair order, and then the customer walks off. So it's a great way to help with this contactless new setup. Also, you know, going remote, we're doing a concierge service now where we just pick the car up from the client. We'll leave a vehicle there, not for them to use, but just leave it there. We'll bring the car back and drop it off and basically finish the paperwork, you know, right on site. If we need them to sign with their finger, they can do that. But, you know, it's very cool that we can go mobile and leverage this technology like that.
Mm-hmm. Let me pull out and I'll let you, this is the one ticket that I was previously using as an example. I'm going to come back to this if we have time. But Scott, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Why don't you go ahead and talk us through one of yours?
Yeah, so, and I'll try to keep this as brief as possible here. And because I think that we're probably going to have to do another presentation that goes a little bit deeper. But one of the things that we had happen a few weeks ago, we had a 2002 model year car came in with a parasitic load. Customer knew he had a parasitic load. He finally brought it in for us to check it. And, you know, to make a long story short, we finally found out that there was a 4-wheel drive module on the vehicle that was actually not responding on the network. And it was the source of the parasitic load. And we didn't find it until down the road here, but I basically changed the way that we do our electrical system analysis now is that any car, you know, say later than 2000, we're doing a full DTC network scan on the vehicle because that could have been revealing. So we've now added that to our electrical system performance test. But, you know, we got cars that come in that won't start or you know, no crank or crank no start or what have you. You know, you want to be able to tell the customer, hey, you know, it's going to be about $150 for us to test it. And of course, you get some of the customers that say, just to check it. Well, this is what we're going to do, sir. We're going to do a battery performance test. We're going to do a full vehicle scan. We're going to do a performance test in the alternator. We're also going to do a parasitic draw test. And then these are the inspection items. And then, you know, as the technician goes through and does the inspection on it, they basically, you know, notate what was going on with the vehicle. Full vehicle DTC health check. These are valuable because now even though the battery was dead, there may be other things on the vehicle that have faults. And you know you need to go back and clear those or take care of them or address them. And if you don't do anything to them today, at least you have them noted. Because if that car leaves and then comes back, you know, a week later with another complaint, you can do another query and see if there's some things that were pre-existing. The last thing we want to do is waste time on or being blamed for, hey, ever since you did this to the car, it's been doing that. So you're basically covering your butt on that. And then one other thing I wanted to point out is that we also leverage the note area for things. So when I'm working with other technicians, a lot of times we may take like the wiring diagram here or pieces of the wiring diagram that are highly contextual to what we need to deal with, and we'll stick them right into the ticket. So they have a point of reference for the technician as we're testing, and we can just dump them right in there. And now we've got a way to, you know, also document the data and so on. So, you know, very, very powerful tool. I can't say enough about, you know, how this product actually helps us document the heck out of of our work. I know I saw a comment in there about what does it look like for the consumer. I'll tell you a quick story. We recently had an episode where a car came in and it had a major problem after we serviced it. And the guy went to the BAR and filed a complaint. And so the BAR came to us and asked us for documentation, paperwork. And I sent him all the data, and it was a day later when he called me back, and he said straight out, he goes, "What shop management system is this? Because I've never seen anything so comprehensive." And I said, "Well, we make a lot of comprehensive notes." And he said, "No, the way that it basically tells the whole story, everything is there in place, and it basically illustrates what's going on." And I thought, well, I need to pass this on to the folks at ShopWare, because they'll want to hear this. But so anyways, that's the end of my little story there. Why don't you go ahead and take it back?
Well, you had a story about this particular RO, and the customer asked you about the clutch thickness, and because you had the starter out.
Oh yeah. Let me go back and I'll share that. And actually, I think this guy he's a high school auto shop instructor at the high school I went to high school at, next town over. And this is the first time we saw this car. And we documented, what we found and everything. Well, he was in the ticket, and you can see right here, it says, "Hey, could you check to see if the clutch has been replaced already?" So the customer posted a message in there. That was yesterday morning. Yeah, we can do that. And then we took a picture. I actually took the picture because we had the starter out. We could take a mirror in there and take a look at the clutch thickness and see that the clutch looks pretty doggone cool. And then looks like the customer came back into the ticket, and he was taking a deeper look, and he says, "Holy Moses, what's your plan for repair? I know you have that webinar tomorrow. See you there." Right? So anyways, this is how modern day communications can take place. This is really, really cool. And this was not staged. It was just, I saw this morning. I'm going, holy crap, this is pretty cool. I got to show this to Carolyn. So what do you think?
Thanks, David, for your comments, and thanks for patronizing Scott Shop. You're in good hands. We obviously have a ton of questions. I'm going to stick around for a while and answer those questions. Let me take the screen back here really quick and just get to our summary screen. Am I on the wrong? Can you see my? You can.
Yeah,
great.
Yeah, you're good.
Great. So sort of in closing, what you need to do here is show them that you fixed the car. We'll have another webinar follow-up with more detail. Thanks for sticking with us while we were doing this this debut of Carolyn and Scott's technical expertise showcase. In addition to just taking that away, which is get the fix onto the ticket, the idea here is this is really bringing the value to your shop forward to your customers. And that is going to generate more sales. They are going to click yes, and they're going to write you 5-star reviews. Overwhelming 5-star reviews about their experience with this style of communication. Anyone who is using Shopper will attest to this. And the more that you master this, the more you're going to unlock that kind of customer response. So with that, Margot, do you mind emceeing?
I got you. There have been a number of excellent questions, but I want to make sure that we start with one, actually two that I'm going to combine that I think you can showcase at the same time. So one is asking about if you recommend a color printer in order to help showcase this to your client. And the other question is about if we integrate with Bolt-On.
Mm-hmm. We do not currently integrate with Bolt-On. Most of the folks that are leaving their legacy shop management systems with Bolt-On bolted on are looking to kind of have one system that does it all instead of 2 separate systems. However, we're not necessarily opposed to integrating with third parties. We already have several that do similar services to Bolt-On. So if that's something that you're particularly interested in maintaining, then that's something that our development team can go back and give you some feedback on. We do have some other products that we integrate with that do things similar to Bolt-On that you might be able to use as well.
On the color printer, let me just talk about that one. So essentially, when we moved to Shop-Ware, this is going about little over 3 years ago, 3 years, 3 months. At the end of every month prior to that, we had a banker's box full of paper, right? So we're making a copy for us, the customer gets a copy. Today, we have no more banker's boxes. It's a manila envelope, and it's mainly our vendor invoices. Everything is digital. When we first moved into this product, I told my guys ahead of time, I said, well, the elderly customers, make sure you pre-print the invoices because I know they're going to want a printed copy. I was so wrong. Customers, as soon as we ask them is a digital copy okay, they are ecstatic to receive a digital copy. So I don't think the color printer is really what you need. You're going to share that ticket with the customer anyway. You can share it to them in their virtual space, and they can see the picture better than you can just printing it up. So hope that answers that question.
We really like the kiosk approach so that you can check the customer out with the ticket open, and you're basically walking them through it. And then when you take their payment, Shop-Ware will automatically email them the PDF, and that will have all the digital media in that PDF, including links that they can click out and see that, scan data or see whatever attachment you made. So they'll get that color immersive record as well to their inbox. If you still want to print it, I use a black and white printer. We still print sometimes for customers that request it. We do double-sided black and white in addition to the PDF, and that's gotten us where we need to go. Certainly we can, get some recommendations and come back to you. So let us know how to reach you.
Ready for the next one?
Mm-hmm.
This is a good one. It's a more philosophical question. Why does the industry keep using the antiquated word labor? It's way past time to replace it. Service is a much more accurate description of what we do. Do you guys want to discuss that a bit?
That's so good. That also feels like a Carm Capriato podcast. I heard, well, there's a lot of like legacy stuff from the blacksmithing days. Like the reason we call them stalls or bays is because they, were stalls for horses instead of cars. I haven't heard the discussion about labor. I don't necessarily have a negative opinion of the word labor. I feel like the labor is just one piece of the recipe. If you think about a service is like a plate that you serve at your restaurant, and then it's got all the different ingredients. It's got the labor, the parts, the has-tos, the inspections, the sublets, and Shop-Ware allows you to put all those together and then reuse them. Scott, what is your thought on the word labor?
Yeah, I agree. I was just thinking out loud there, the name of our shop is Connie and Dick's Service Center, not Connie and Dick's Labor Center, right? So, yeah, I agree with the comment, why are we using these old antiquated things? And I think it becomes your dialogue and how you're presenting your business. I mean, you don't have to say, hey, my tech's going to need 3 hours of labor. No, Mr. Customer, we're going to need to spend about, 5 service hours or whatever. So feel free to do that. I know that, the invoice slices it out that way. And, there may be some other legal reasons for that. I know that there are some areas of the country that try to tax labor or what have you. So, so that there may be a reason why we have some of these legacy things here, but no, I agree. This is all about raising our professionalism. We're working on that highly complex machine. That's really a science project that actually works. And we're the ones that are capable of putting it back into working order when it's broken. So.
Yeah, I was thinking we could replace the word labor with like miracles or something. Yeah, on the other hand, when you start to add the additional color around the labor items, it's not just labor anymore. You're not just using the word labor. Labor is just a category of all that more specific stuff. And it is labor. I mean, it's work. And understanding that work is, I think, the kind of the purpose of this type of communication.
Yeah, and I guess one other thing there is labor physically illustrates that there's physical work going on, right? Mm-hmm. Well, a lot of this stuff is mental, right? Mm-hmm. Or you've got to do some analysis, you've got to do research. there's a lot that goes into actually providing a solution. So it's definitely not all labor.
Mm-hmm.
I also wanted to just thank everyone. There's a ton of compliments in here, and it would probably seem self-serving to read these, but we really appreciate all of your love, and we're super glad that you love Shop-Ware and that your clients are impressed with the platform. We have some more questions. Do you want to keep it cracking, or?
Do it.
Okay. Someone would like for you to show the customer view, so really helping everyone to kind of understand what this is going to look on the flip side for the customer.
Sure. So let me get out of the slideshow here. Let me get back here. So we'll go back to this ticket I mentioned earlier. So this is a hybrid battery replacement. We also did a 5,000 mile service. This is already done. So this is an invoice, and the customer is no longer being solicited for additional approvals. But the least I can show you kind of what that looks like. And it's actually kind of cool to see it from the customer's point of view, because especially on a mobile device, which is when they're usually seeing it. So if we open this in a smaller window, it essentially emulates what it looks like on the customer's phone. And it will open. So, in Shop-Ware's workflow, you're not having to download an app, you're not having to do anything. Basically, you're sending the customer a link. They're opening that link either, on their phone or on their desktop through their email, however you choose to share it with them. And then that link launches a web browser and delivers them to the repair order with basically their view of the repair order. And you control when you share the job with the customer so that you can get this composed in a way where it's time for them to look at it. So it says, welcome to the customer. There's some details about the ticket. The body of the page includes all the stuff that you've done to the car. So again, this is the services themselves. And then they can either click this notes tab, or they can click the button to view notes. And then they see that notes feed. They can see who wrote what. They can see the different kinds of attachments. So in this case, there's a health check attachment. Again, it's just going to open that diagnostic report from that scan tool directly on their phone. So now they can look and see, okay, I see that I have a battery module. In this case, this is block 11. That is a volt lower than the rest. Now, maybe they don't know to go and find that, but if they want to go find it, they certainly can. So this kind of stuff is presented to them. This is an example of the screenshot of the battery test that we are running. So this is us showing the customer, hey, this is the diagnostic information, not just the code, but the actual test that shows that there's a pretty significant deviation in the max and min blocks on this battery. And then that's being described. We gave her an opportunity to buy a theft deterrent plate for her catalytic converter. She did purchase the 5,000 mile service in addition. And then we did the load test. So it shows you the results of the battery replacement. So again, even though we've sold this job already, we've replaced the battery now, we're still gonna take the time to run that same load test so we can show to the customer, here's the delta, this is the difference. Now you can see that the battery's good. And that means that when she drives out of that repair facility, she's not thinking, okay, now my light's off. She's thinking, okay, I got my hybrid battery replaced and I needed to have my hybrid battery replaced. We're also adding photos. This is the hybrid battery fan that we clean as part of that service every single time. So part of the hybrid battery replacement is the fan cleaning. This will load.
Could you enlarge the screen? A couple of folks are saying they can't see that. Right.
Well, it will become, actually, I think what I'll do is I'll make it this wide so it's still phone, and then I'll just make it bigger. We'll see if that breaks. How is that? That's probably a little better, huh? It's still on mobile.
Yeah, looks good. Yeah, so you're trying to demo a mobile device, which is tough, but consumer, think about the consumer can easily pinch and zoom and all that good stuff.
So this is the photos of the hybrid battery being replaced, so they can see what this thing is. Some details from the maintenance service, and then the customer said, great, we'll pick it up tomorrow morning. fabulous. So they got a chance to see this whole thing and, you know, remote pay before they came and got the car. So this is what the customer sees.
Do you want to show
Perfect.
a print? You want to show a print version of that as well?
Let's do it.
And also real quick, while we're on that topic, we have someone asking if all the notes are visible to the customer.
You can keep these notes unpublished if you wish to have them not show to the customer. You also have the ability to put notes into what's called repair order notes so that they're only back of house, they're not front of house. There's some folks who prefer to do that and then decide what they want to publish directly under the RO. So there's different ways of controlling the notes feed and what shows to the customer. This has got some larger photos on it, so it's taking a minute to download. And as soon as it's loaded, I'll open it. For those who are familiar with Shop-Ware already, it can take a long time for the PDF to get created, and we have an optimization that the developers are currently working on that will be delivered probably next week. So stay tuned for next week's release. And our next webinar.
While we're waiting for that to load, if you could also talk about how you're structuring your notes. We had a couple questions on what sort of your best practices around structuring notes for the customer.
Yeah, I read that it can feel confusing. Generally speaking, we have found, at least in my own business, that the chronological order of the notes is sufficiently storytelling that the customer can kind of read through, they understand what they've already read, and then they can you know, comment, and we can see when they've commented and continue the conversation over there. So we haven't found that the notes feed has been problematic. The struggle, of course, is that there's a lot of things going on the ticket, right? You have maintenance, you have potentially diagnosis, and then you have like different kinds of things you're talking about, different stuff. And that's where, you know, CCC can get really muddy because you're trying to figure out where to put everything and have it read in one linear line. Separating those two things into separate spaces is the idea that you can kind of read what you did all in one place and read what you said all in one place. And what you said is in order of when you said it. So that's probably the easiest way for the customer to make sense of it. And then of course they were there. They were along for the ride. So they're familiar with the conversation. Here's how that ends up presenting. So we have this is the printed ticket, right? So the customer can get access to the RO itself through a web browser if you choose to share it with them. They also can receive a copy of the ticket emailed to them for their receipt. And that includes the specifics of the services that you performed. So in this case, there were 4 services: warning light, courtesy check, hybrid battery pack, and 5,000 mile service. California requires that you itemize all of the components of the service. If you wish to just do menu pricing, Shop-Ware does allow that also. So you have some control over what level of detail is included here. Here are the parts that were included in the maintenance service, and then the terms of service, remote pay. All of the inspection items are put in their own inspection report. So again, you're not putting a 60-point inspection and having that distract from what the service included, like what they're paying for. So we have sort of the invoice stuff at the top and then the inspection results on a subsequent page. You can choose whether you want to print this or not. And then the notes proceed. So this is the notes feed, and here are all the customer states notes. This is what I was mentioning, that it will include links to all of the attachments. So even if they're not coming to the RO, they can click to go and view their scan data, even from the PDF. Hybrid battery detail, all of the media that is in thumbnails here at the top is then repeated at the bottom in full size. So down here, we get to see them at full scale. Obviously, when you're in the browser, you click the image and it expands for you. On the PDF, you don't get that choice. So Shop-Ware blows them up for the customer to reference. This is an 11-page invoice. The point is, it doesn't matter because they're going to get a digital copy. You don't necessarily have to print it. If you did want to print it, you can choose how many of these pages you want to print. But there's no penalty for being more long-winded because they're going to get a digital copy. You shouldn't feel penalized for adding more value to that ticket. Now, this was a 11-page RO, but it was also whatever, $3,800. So, you know, we're happy to provide as much detail to justify that expense. 3,300, excuse me. Any other questions?
Yeah, there was a suggestion, and I'd like to hear what you have to say about it. One of our customers says that he actually is using a canned job as the initial concerns, and so keeping them sort of all in one place by using that as a service item. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, you can put, you know, again, your customer states wherever you want to put it. So if you find that the checklist format is nice, we kind of have that as, we call it special requests. So for example, I can type in requests here. It's going to bring up the special requests, and then essentially you can just start itemizing what the customer's requests are. And then obviously the technician has to go and check them off so things don't get missed. We like this when it's special stuff, not every single time, but for folks that want to use this at the top of every RO to gather everything, this is a great way to do it.
Okay, great. Well, that's it for the more general questions. There are some specific questions that I have taken note of, and we will be following up with you guys individually. So I think that that's a wrap on the squash over here.
Thank you, Margot. Thanks, Roxanne, for putting this on. Obviously, Scott, thank you very much for your time and your continued participation and sharing all of the awesome sauce that comes out of your shop. We are going to do this again. We would love your feedback. Thank you very much for all the engagement in the chat channel. I was also reading while we were going through this, and it's just super heartwarming. So, you know, really respect everyone out there kicking ass on the cars every single day. And we'll do this again. We'd love to know how to improve or what else you want us to talk about, and we'll see you then. Thanks very much.
Great. Thanks.
Everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Have a great day.